Straight ahead, sprinting to the primary. With 6 weeks until the March 3rd primary, we look at the hottest race in Texas this year, U.S. Senate. We focus on the Democratic primary this week. James Talarico tells me what he thinks the biggest issue is in the race against Jasmine Crockett. Back to the polls in Tarrant County. Early voting for a special election for an open state Senate seat is set to begin this week. Republican Leigh Wambsganss and Democrat Taylor Rehmet tell us their top supporters, top concerns. And what's next in Venezuela? After the U.S. captured Nicolas Maduro, Senator Ted Cruz tells us what he wants to see happen in this embattled country. Good morning, I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas starts now. Hello and welcome to Eye on Politics. A lot happening, so let's get right to it. Candidates and their campaigns are sprinting toward the March 3rd primary here in Texas. And looking at the political calendar, that's a little over 6 weeks away. Early voting in person begins in about 1 month. It runs from Tuesday, February 17th through Friday, February 27th. Election Day is Tuesday, March 3rd, and the primary runoff election is set for Tuesday, May 26th. As we've reported, the marquee race this year is for U.S. Senate. And a new poll out Thursday on the Republican primary shows Attorney General Ken Paxton with a 1 percentage point lead over incumbent Senator John Cornyn, 27 to 26%. Congressman Wesley Hunt of Houston has 16%, 29% remain undecided. Last week, Politico reported that President Trump has no plan to endorse Senator Cornyn at this point, despite the request by not only Cornyn, but other key Republican senators. And that was confirmed by Senate Majority Leader John Thune on Thursday. That same poll shows State Representative James Talarico of Austin ahead of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Dallas by 9 percentage points, 47 to 38%. 15% remain undecided. A different poll last month showed Crockett ahead of Talarico by 9 percentage points. Last week, Talarico held a town hall in Plano where his campaign said he attracted 2,000 people. He said he has 13,000 campaign volunteers statewide to knock on doors, and he raised a total of $13 million through December 31st. I interviewed Talarico and I asked him why primary voters should choose him over Congresswoman Crockett.
I think I bring something unique to this primary race. I have a history of winning tough races and flipping difficult districts. I first won a seat in the Texas legislature by flipping a Trump district in a county that was so red it hadn't voted for a Democrat for president since Jimmy Carter. I did that by building a big tent, energizing Democrats to show up and vote, inspiring young voters to show up who hadn't participated before, and also peeling people off from the other side, moderates, independents, and yes, some disillusioned Republicans. And so that's the kind of broad coalition we need if we're going to win a seat like this here in Texas.
Congresswoman Crockett has made some controversial comments with regards to Latinos and how they voted, if they voted for President Trump. And so how important is it that the issue of electability for the general election?
Well, I think that is the central question in this primary. Who can win in November? And Congresswoman Crockett, who I deeply respect, is going to be making her case. I'm going to be making my case. But every Democratic voter who shows up in this primary needs to have one question on their mind, and that is who is best positioned to win in November? Because if we don't win, we can't help people. We can't fight back against Republican extremism. In the Texas legislature, for 4 terms, I have seen the consequences of losing elections up close. I've seen my constituents get hurt. I've seen reproductive rights rolled back. I've seen the LGBTQ community attacked. And so I am tired of losing elections. And I have a track record of winning races like this. And our campaign, as you already mentioned, is built to win. And so I hope folks are laser-like focused on this question of who can win.
A lot of discussion right now on health care, specifically on extending the enhanced credits for the Affordable Care Act. Where what plan do you like on that specifically? Because the House just passed a bill that would extend it 3 years. The Senate is working on a different bill that would extend it 2 years. So where are you on this?
Well, we need to at least extend it for 3 years. I believe healthcare is a human right. I'm a type 1 diabetic who has struggled to afford my own insulin. And that's why when I was elected to the State House, I passed the first ever cap on insulin copays at $25 per prescription. That's the kind of leadership we need in Washington, someone who's going to fight for our healthcare.
There have been reports that have shown that there's a lot of fraud in these Affordable Care Act program as it relates to these insurance companies signing people up, and then there are no real people attached to these accounts. So you have insurance companies getting tax dollars. And I'm wondering, should the U.S. clamp down on this? And should there also be income limits? Because there have been reports that show people with $150,000 being able to get health care basically for nothing.
We absolutely have to tackle fraud wherever we see it, especially in healthcare. And this is why I'm putting forward a plan that would allow every Texan, every American, regardless of their age, to join Medicare so that we have a nonprofit public option in our healthcare system that can compete with these for-profit giant insurance companies and then drive down costs for everyone. So that's the kind of bold proposal we need in Washington so that we can actually provide quality care and quality insurance to every single Texan.
So is that Medicare for all?
Well, I like to call it Medicare for y'all, because not only is it providing a quality option for people, but it honors people's free choice. We in Texas, we value independence, we value freedom, we value choice. And so we need a healthcare plan that provides universal coverage and provides that choice. And I think our proposal does that.
Let's talk about some recent headlines. The ICE shooting in Minneapolis is certainly, there's a lot of discussion over that. Where are you on that? And what do you say to law enforcement officers who said people should not be interfering in law enforcement operations, including ICE?
Well, once we have a Senate majority, we must launch a full investigation into ICE. We must haul these masked men before Congress so the world can see their faces. We need to have accountability from the very top, including Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller and the architects of this mass deportation plan. And we've got to hold ICE agents accountable when they kill civilians. This kind of extremism that we've seen on this issue is something that should be deeply troubling to all Texans, all Americans, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum.
10 days ago, the U.S. seized Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, brought him to the United States. Did you support that or oppose that?
Well, I'm 36 years old. I was 12 when 9/11 happened. And so I know the importance of keeping this country safe. But as a millennial, I also saw how military disasters like the Iraq War robbed this nation of young lives, of billions of dollars, of our moral standing in the world. And with this military intervention in Venezuela, we saw flashes of the Iraq War. And so I'm concerned that the president embarked on this military adventure without the approval of Congress, and that's unconstitutional. I don't believe that Nicolas Maduro was a good guy. He was a brutal dictator. But we do not confront authoritarianism abroad with authoritarianism at home. And so we've got to go about these things while still following our Constitution.
As for Crockett, she wrapped up a bus tour last week in the Rio Grande Valley, San Antonio, and Corpus Christi. Crockett's campaign has not released her fundraising numbers just yet. I'm scheduled to interview her later this week. Crockett and Talarico are set to square off in their first debate coming up at the AFL-CIO convention on Saturday. And one other note about the U.S. Senate race, Senate Minority Leader Democrat Chuck Schumer said while they have a stronger path to retake the majority in the Senate later this year, Texas is not among the states included in their path to victory. The Congressional Rating Service Cook Political Report considers the Senate race, quote, likely are. Up next, Tarrant County residents will be heading to the polls this week. We spoke with both candidates vying for an open state Senate seat about their priorities when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Now to a local race that will heat up this week, the runoff election for State Senate District 9 in Tarrant County between Republican Leigh Wambsganss and Democrat Taylor Rehmet. Early voting begins this Wednesday, the 21st, and runs through Tuesday, January 27th. Election Day is Saturday, January 31st. The district is in Tarrant County and includes Fort Worth, Keller, Southlake, Hearst, and other cities. On election night in November, Wambsganss and Rehmet finished in the top two, and Republican John Huffman finished in third. While Huffman and Wambsganss had more total votes than Rehmet, he had more votes than Huffman and Wambsganss combined when you look at the results on only Election Day. We asked both about that and about how energized their supporters are to get to the polls. We'll hear from Rehmet, but we will start with Wambsganss.
We have an army of volunteers. Republicans are very energized, and I believe that they are finally realizing the threat to Tarrant County. You know, the Keep Tech, Turn Tarrant Blue and all of those groups have been very active, but they're most active right now. They are really determined to take this seat, and that's why we are working very, very hard.
I asked you about that because when you go back and you look at the special election in November, while you and Republican John Huffman had more total votes and more early votes than Rehmet, Rehmet had more votes than the two Republicans, you and Huffman, on Election Day.
Right.
How big of a concern was that, and what does it say about what you're doing now?
Well, we cannot ever take any race for granted, but the good thing about that race is it was really a primary race. We ran that as a primary because in this jungle election it was 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And so the Republicans were really running against each other. I beat my opponent more than 2-1, and now we're moving on to what is ostensibly a general election. The biggest challenge is the election date. Texans are not used to voting in January, right? January 31st is the election date. Early voting runs from Wednesday the 21st through Tuesday the 27th. Can you remember ever voting in January in Texas? No one is used to it. So that's the big challenge, is educating our voters about the election date.
What is the threat that you speak of?
So the threat is turning Tarrant blue. You know, we believe as conservatives that conservative policies and conservative legislation is the best thing for all Texans.
And what are those policies? I mean, what are your voters telling you? What are their top concerns?
So this district has 23 cities, whole or partial, and 13 school districts. And it doesn't matter what city I'm in. The top concern is property taxes. From there, it goes to public safety and school funding. Those are really the top one. It doesn't matter what city I'm in, is property taxes. And that's something I want to tackle and get some real property tax relief. You know, the last time we spoke was before the November election.
Right.
Voters overwhelmingly approved increasing the homestead exemption up to $140,000 for everyone, and it goes up to $200,000 for seniors or those with disabilities. I think we can do better. I've done the math. There is a surplus down there in Austin that shouldn't be a surplus. That should be returned to the voters in the form of property tax relief.
You think spending is too high?
I do.
Okay, in what areas?
If you do analysis of the entire budget, we have over about $368 billion budget. There are items in every category where you can find. But when you realize our state has more than $20 billion sitting in a surplus, you realize we can do better. That money needs to go, that's our money. That's taxpayers' money. That's families' money trying to buy groceries, trying to, pay their light bill. So there's no reason for the state to have a surplus. We need to send that back to the voters.
I think they're very energized. I mean, with a campaign, you can't always measure the energy, but you can feel it. And we feel the energy for our campaign and this election every single day. We're seeing that Democrats and some folks from the Republican side are energized about getting something different out of their Senate district.
And let me ask you, because on Election Day itself the last time, you had more votes than the 2 Republicans combined. Now, obviously, total votes, they had more, but I'm wondering, how did you accomplish that? And what does that say now about this race?
What it says is that, voters are energized for what my campaign is talking about, which is affordability, It's about, meeting people where they're at. That's our campaign strategy, is talking with voters and listening to them instead of talking about them. And this is what this is all about, going out there, block walking, talking with voters at their doors, or on the phones, calling undecided voters, and really listening to what their concerns are. I think that, why we have so much enthusiasm for this campaign is we are doing the work, and, we were outspent, but we weren't outworked, and it pays off.
And what are you doing specifically? You talked a little bit about it, door knocking, et cetera, to make sure that these folks, your supporters, get out and vote for you.
When it comes to door knocking, I mean, that's what we've centered this around is, we have volunteers, people that are feeling more energized than others and wanting to volunteer their own time on the weekend, during the week, to get our message out there that we want, our public schools fully funded, that they want our affordability crisis to be addressed, and they want folks like my own parents to retire with dignity and respect and not be crushed by the rising costs of living, especially, property taxes.
If you are to win this election, what would it say about this race, and what implications could there be statewide, if any?
This would mean something big, in my opinion. I know that there's so many folks out here that feel like they've been left behind. Working folks that, get up early, clock in and leave late. And I think that whenever I'm elected, that they will feel like they have real representation. But the bigger thing is that it could be a domino that goes and shows other folks that, hey, you can grassroots, and organically run for office and get elected in this state.
Whoever wins will finish out the remaining term of former Republican State Senator Kelly Hancock. He resigned last year and was appointed Texas Comptroller by Governor Greg Abbott. The term ends at the end of this year, and both will face each other again this November for the new term starting in January. Up next, what's next for Venezuela after the U.S. captured Nicolas Maduro? We asked Senator Ted Cruz when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas comes right back. Now to the future of Venezuela. President Trump met with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado at the White House last week. It comes about 2 weeks after the U.S. military captured Nicolas Maduro 2 weeks ago. The president has said Machado doesn't have the support within her country, and he has signaled a willingness to work with Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. Machado also met with a group of senators last week, including Ted Cruz. During a visit to Fort Worth earlier last week, I asked Cruz about the future of that country. Senator, let me just ask you a quick question about what's next in Venezuela, and can Venezuela continue with the existing regime in place?
Well, listen, it's something I've talked about at length on my podcast. I think what is next, and I hope we'll have free and fair elections in Venezuela, and I hope the people will elect a leader who is democratically elected, who embraces freedom, who embraces free enterprise, and who wants to do business with America.
Cruz, along with Senator John Cornyn and Republican members of Congress from North Texas, were in Fort Worth on Monday during a visit by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. He toured the Lockheed Martin plant that builds the F-35 Lightning II, the most advanced and lethal fighter jet in the world. The stop here was part of what Hegseth calls his, quote, Arsenal of Freedom tour, and comes after President Trump announced he wants to boost military spending from $900 billion this year to $1.5 trillion next year. Hegseth addressed that with Lockheed Martin employees.
We're rebuilding the arsenal of freedom. President Trump did it in his first term, and we're going to do it again. We had a historic budget last year. I don't know if you saw, the president announced the goal of $1.5 trillion for our national defense in 2027. That is a message to the world.
Hegseth then signed the bomb bay in the F-35 on display. Free trials and recurring subscriptions can be opportunities to try something new. That is, until you try to cancel them, which can seem impossible. While there are some consumer protections, some members of Congress say they don't go far enough, and they want to change that. Sarah Jenkins explains in the brief.
A bipartisan group of House lawmakers reintroduced the Unsubscribe Act on January 13th, reviving legislation that would require subscription cancellation to be as easy as signing up. The bill would also add guardrails around free trials and recurring consumer notices. The Federal Trade Commission proposed a click-to-cancel provision in 2024, but a 2025 court ruling blocked its enforcement due to procedural issues. According to the proposed bill, consent would be necessary before charging after a free or reduced cost trial. Periodic notifications about charges, changes, and how to cancel would be required, and there would be a ban on automatically enrolling consumers into a contract. For The Brief, I'm Sarah Jenkins.
And don't forget, you can watch all our full interviews today on our CBS Texas YouTube page, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button. And that's all for Eye on Politics this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. I'll see you next week, and from all of us here, enjoy your Sunday.